which they use to contact their demon gods. Listen to what God says. Do not follow after them after they're destroyed before you, that you do not inquire after their gods, saying, how do these nations serve their gods, that I may also do likewise? You shall not behave thus toward the Lord your God. Deuteronomy 12, verse 30 and following. Look, God said, you cannot take the practices of the ancient pagan nations, throw Christian terminology at it, and think you're going to honor me with it because your intent is to honor Jesus. Look, Ray Youngin wrote a book you all need to read. There's some wonderful ones. Ray Youngin, Roger Oakland, Warren Smith, Dave Hunt, Carol Matriciana. I've made a small and insignificant, compared to theirs, contribution on this field of spiritual deception. But all of them will say to you, as long as you're sincere, you can do whatever you want and honor God. Ray Youngin says in his book, A Time of Deception, look, the intent has nothing to do with it. You can have two people standing on a cliff. One has the intent to commit suicide and to smash on the bottom of the ravine. The other has the intent to fly. And the one throws himself off the cliff, full of positive imagery and Anthony Robbins' positive confessions and Norman Vincent Peale and Robert Schuller's positive speaking. I will fly, I will fly, I will fly, I will fly. Splat. The other guy knew what his intent was. They both jumped off the cliff. They both wound up with the same result. Get the picture? Okay. So the intent has nothing to do with it. In fact, it is not a matter of focus, Dave Hunt said, but yoga was designed to create union with Hindu deities. You cannot use the breathing techniques of pranayama. I don't care that Rick Warren is promoting them. You cannot use those techniques and think you are going to encounter anything other than the ancient demon gods they were designed to put you in contact with. We could discuss that all day, but if you want to know, get Carol Matriciana's video on yoga and Dave Hunt's book on yoga as well. Key materials. I was involved in reincarnation, out-of-body experiences. My psychic abilities were increasing. And now that I was in Silva Mind Control, I was having ecstatic experiences that convinced me this had to be from God. And through Silva Mind Control, I was introduced. I was one of the star pupils there. At that time, he didn't have many pupils who had the facility for this kind of thing that I had. A dubious distinction at best, I assure you. And one night, this leader of the Silva Mind Control in Mexico City said, Joe, I have got to take you to meet this woman. He had told us about her. An old woman in the slums of Mexico City who for some 40-odd years had been going into a trance state automatically, and suddenly another being would take possession of her. A full trance channel. Any of you who watched Oprah Winfrey any number of years would have seen it take place on national television through Jay-Z Knight and any number of other sincere, deluded, deceived, demonized individuals, as I was on my way to becoming. And this woman would sit in front of an altar, and it had bizarre things on it, a rusty hunting knife and a pair of scissors and flowers and roses on there. It had a statue of Cuauhtémoc, the Aztec prince, who claimed to be the one through whom Pachita was operating, the one who had been murdered by the conquistadores in Mexico City, untimely cut off because he wouldn't cough up Aztec treasure. And so now he was coming back to fulfill his karma, a term made very familiar to many of us by Shirley MacLaine, you know, standing there on the shores of the Pacific. I am God, I am God. Now what you am is delusional. And if you want to know what these spirits coming through teaching you about karma and reincarnation have to say, they will teach you the same kinds of things that Esther Hicks teaches in The Secret, Rhonda Byrne's book that pretty much was written in conjunction with her, where the spirits come and say, if you send out negative vibrations, you're going to bring the negative karma back to yourself, and the negative, as they say, what you are putting out is going to come back to you. The same kind of teaching, by the way, in Christianized garb that you will see the positive confession teachers speaking. And here is this old woman sitting in front of this altar, and it has the statue of Cuauhtémoc, but it also has a crucifix on it and a picture of Jesus. And people, when I first went into this woman's home, filled, crowded with people, it was chaos, turmoil everywhere. People extremely well-dressed from the highest echelons of Mexican society, having come from all over Mexico to consult with her. People from across the border, from Canada, from the United States coming to see her. People from the lowest strata of society dressed in rags, but all of them with one thing in common: a desperate need for healing and for an experience that would tell them God, something, cared for them and could bring restoration to them. And when I walked into this woman's room and I saw this old woman sitting there puffing on a cigarette with her hands covered up to her forearms in dried, crusted blood, I said, my God, what takes place in this room? And I stood in front of the altar and I said, Lord Jesus, you know my heart. If you are working in this place, oh Jesus, I will give my life to this work and serve you here. Talk about sincerity and devotion. The woman identified me as a medium, something I'd never used as a term for myself. And I went back, and for 14 months I became one of her personal assistants, the one in training, the chosen one, who was designed and designated by the Spirit to take over when she died. And I will tell you, people, I watched over 400 operations. I had my hands in over 200 of them personally. I can't prove to you what happened. Dr. Stan, I know that as a medical man and the other doctors here, you listen to what I'm saying and they think, okay, I'm done, that's it. This woman is indeed certifiable. Where's the straitjacket? Where's the room next to the guy who thinks he's a poached egg? Yeah, because what I saw was medically, physically impossible. In the power of this Spirit, Pachita, now referred to as hermanito, little brother, no longer referred to as Pachita. The first operation I saw was on a woman who needed cataract surgery, and back 33 years ago, 1971, 72, cataract surgery wasn't what it is today. It was a lot more frightening, especially in Mexico. Sorry, Mexico, but that's the truth. And she begged Hermanito to do a surgery, and he did. He sits her down in a chair. Hermanito comes, I am with you, my little brothers, after we've recited the Lord's Prayer, after nuns and priests have been sprinkling holy water around. I am standing right behind this woman, as close to her face as I am to this microphone. I'm holding a piece of cotton underneath. It's the first surgery I've ever witnessed personally, and certainly the first one I've ever assisted in. And Hermanito is standing in front of her. She leans her head back. He takes a bottle of alcohol, brand new, denatured alcohol that you use for disinfecting. And as he's telling her to lean back, I can see kind of a shimmer of a green light. It had no source there. The only source was a single light bulb that was turned off. There were only some candles on the altar. But I could see clearly it was as though it was illuminated by this light. And Hermanito, through Pachita, takes the knife, begins to cut, takes the knife again and scrapes it, pours the bottle of denatured alcohol. And I don't know about you guys, but I've caught a little bit of alcohol as I've been sprinkling around, disinfecting thermometers. I don't know about you guys, but my eyes hurt when I do that. Hermanito opened up the bottle, poured it in this woman's eyes. She didn't blink. Oh no, Hermanito, I feel nothing. The patients were automatically anesthetized. And I watched as she peeled off this scum, put it on the cotton I was holding, peels off another one, bandages the woman up, has her carried out. About a week and a half, 10 days later, the woman comes back. Oh, my cataracts are gone. I can see. The doctors were awfully ticked off. They were planning on doing the surgery, but the cataracts aren't there. They can't figure it out. People, I saw an inoperable brain tumor removed. A man from the American colony who'd been given up by his doctors for dead. And Hermanito stretches him out on a special plank, and I'm one of the assistants. I'm talking to this man, helping him stay conscious. And Hermanito, as he's lying there on a sheet on this plank, raises the knife in a salute, and then the scissors, and plunges them into this man's skull. I know I've lost most of you here. I can only tell you what I saw. And he begins to part the skull, and he opens things up, and he's sticking his hand in there. And the man who was having the operation is saying, this is really freaky. I can feel the hand inside my head. Does it hurt? No. And all of a sudden, as I'm talking to him, his eyes suddenly cross completely, totally cross-eyed. They were not normally. And he said, "Oi, this is really feeling weird," as he's lying there with everything going triple. And I said, "Hermanito, something's wrong." And Hermanito said, "What is it?" I said, "His eyes are crossed." "Well, that won't do, will it?" And Hermanito puts his hand in. By the way, no sleeves, no pockets. I was often with Pachita setting up for these operations. We were not preparing little thumbs with fake betel nut juice in there or chicken gizzards that were palmed into somebody's whatever. He sticks his hand back in the man's skull after he's pulled out this mass that suddenly fills the room with a stench, this dark gangly thing. I don't know, I'm not a doctor, but it was long and it had gangly things and like nodules, and it stank. And he puts his hand back in, and as I'm watching the man, his eyes straighten back up again, as evidently the optic nerve is straightened out. Oh, much better. People, I saw a young boy, born dumb, have a curse operation in which Hermanito slits his throat open while he's sitting there, his parents gasping. I had my mother and father there, and Hermanito reaches in and materializes. It's a well-known phenomena in the world of the occult. In India, they see it all the time. In Latin America, in the parts of the wild where the shamans and the witch doctors are, they see this with great frequency. He materialized a hair-covered rock from the boy's throat and removes it. And then he's standing there asking for a miniature key. And he's kind of tapping his foot saying, "It's in your purse." Hermanito nor Pachita had been in my mother's purse. They didn't know what was on her keychain. My mother had a beautiful little tiny miniature key. He takes the key, he puts it in the boy's throat, he turns the thing, he bandages him up, and then he commands this boy, who has never spoken a word or said a sound. He couldn't even grunt, except occasionally. And he passes his hand over and he commands the boy to speak, and the first word this boy speaks is my father's name. And the parents are falling down before Hermanito, Pachita. "Oh, God bless you, Hermanito." And Hermanito very humbly says, "Oh no, little ones, all glory to my Father above." You don't think that's impressive? You don't think that when I spoke to Edith Schaeffer, the wife of one of the great theologians of the 20th century, who has since gone home to be with the Lord, and she happened to be in the same place where I was in Acapulco one day, and we got into a conversation. Someone who was close to me at that time was attending L'Abri and was very close to them, and they wanted them to talk to me and straighten me out. If anybody could, Edith Schaeffer could. And she's talking to me, and I'm sitting back, and I have to tell you, I blush in mortification at what I said to Frances Schaeffer, one of the greatest Christian ladies. I said to her, "Mrs. Schaeffer, with all due respect, although I felt none, you wouldn't know a genuine miracle if it ran you down in the street. You narrow-minded, Bible-thumping, fundamentalist, evangelical dogmatist. How dare you tell me this isn't from God? After all, by their fruits you shall know them, right? Doesn't the Bible say, Matthew 7, you will know them by their fruits? And the little lesson in basic spiritual agriculture, good fruit doesn't come from bad trees don't produce good fruit, you'll know them by their fruits. Children are being healed. A Korean War veteran who was paraplegic is now beginning to get sensation and movement in his legs. Brain tumors, inoperable, are being removed. Children are being given back to their parents, restored in whole. Lung transplants, vertebra transplants. I know I just lost the rest of you. How can you tell me this is not from God, you narrow-minded Bible thumper? And isn't that the attitude of most Christians? How can you, perhaps someone even in this room said it not too many hours ago, how dare you say to me that my Christian yoga isn't from God? It is my intent to honor Jesus. It's good fruit. I feel the warm fuzzies. I feel close to God. I'm praying. Don't you know how to pray? You ever notice the arrogance of those who defend their positions in occultism? The problem is, most of us in the occult never bother reading the rest of the story. We wouldn't know how to test the spirits of God to see whether they're from God in accordance with the Word of God. We wouldn't know the